Hello, World History students. Today we're going to be talking about the Mongol Empire. This is Unit 6, Part 3. We read on Friday a little bit about this information already, and then I apologize, the EQs are a little bit out of order, and they might repeat a little bit of what we talked about with the Unit 6, Part 2 lecture as well. So first of all, you remember that Genghis Khan was able to take over a huge amount of territory, and then he passed away. His successors, his sons, his grandsons, continued to expand his empire after his death, and they created then this Pax Mongolica, which we'll talk about once again here in just a second. But it goes all the way from Korea or from the coast of the Pacific Ocean all the way into Europe, all the way to Poland and Hungary and so on, all the way down into Persia, really a huge land empire. And this is, successful for, I don't know, about 100 years or so after the death of Genghis Khan. And then it's all going to eventually fall apart. And then also those individual khanates, as they're called, are going to fall as well. Just, I guess if I would address the EQs, the Mongol Empire falls apart first because it gets divided into those khanates, but then also because I think the people who had been taken over by the Mongols got tired of rule by the Mongols, and the Mongols are people from the steppes of Asia. They're, people who were pastoralists or nomads, and it's easier for them to conquer empires than it is for them to rule over civilized empires. And so eventually, I think the people of those individual khanates got tired of being ruled by Mongols and overthrew them. And by that point in time, after about 100 years after conquest, the Mongols are no longer quite as tough. They've become kind of soft and civilized themselves, and so they are unable to keep a hold of the territories that they had taken over. The Mongol dynasty in China is really the place where the most action is happening, I guess, for us as students of world history. You might remember that Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, took the throne in 1279, and this is the first time that a foreigner had ruled China. He builds a new capital at Beijing, which is closer to Mongolia, but it's outside of Mongolia. This is the first time that the Mongols are having a settled capital, a great capital city, and with palaces and those sorts of things. And once again, I just want to remind you that I think this is the beginning of the Mongols becoming civilized, becoming kind of tamed. And although it's going to take a long time for the Chinese to overthrow their Mongol rulers, it is an indication that they're starting to get soft, I guess. A couple of different times, I think it was 1279, 12, nah, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to give you the dates, I can't remember. But a couple of different times, the Chinese dynasty of Mongols tried to take over Japan by building a huge fleet of ships, and you might remember that twice the Japanese are able to defeat that. Now, Kublai Khan rejected the Chinese scholar officials. He had rejected these Confucianist officials, if you remember, and hired his own people, Mongols, or even foreigners, non-Chinese people, to run his government. He's getting rid of Confucianism because Confucianism really doesn't speak to him. It doesn't really mean anything to him. It's a tremendous way for the Chinese themselves to rule a great empire, but Kublai Khan and the Mongols who follow him just don't really appreciate it. Kublai Khan was a fairly successful ruler, however, and you might remember that he restored the Grand Canal. This is a man-made waterway that connects two of the main rivers in China, and it was produced in order to bring a lot of the food crops from the south, rice, that fast-growing rice, up to the northern parts of China, including the capital of Beijing, including expanding the roads another 135 miles that had already been built, more than 1,000 miles of roadway in China. The Pax Mongolica, or the Mongol Peace along the Silk Road, was something that was encouraging trade and encouraging a connection between China and the rest of the world. The Mongolians make sure that people who are traveling on the Silk Roads are safe, and this allows for Chinese products like silk and porcelain, and then Chinese technologies as well, like gunpowder and the magnetic compass and paper money. Those actual products, or how to make those things, are traveling back and forth among the Silk Road, and we have this kind of cultural diffusion happening. Once again, I'd like to stress how important gunpowder is. As you'll see, the next couple of empires that we talk about use gunpowder in order to seize power and then maintain power as well. And anybody and everybody who is going to create large empires and going to be successful in battle is going to be employing gunpowder really from this time on. A lot of traders are coming to along the Silk Road. People from Europe are actually traveling along the Silk Road too. And there is this person by the name of Marco Polo, an Italian person. He is a person who we're not exactly sure that he did this, but allegedly this Marco Polo goes all the way to China and works as a government official. Remember, Kublai Khan is hiring foreigners, but this guy allegedly worked as a government official in Kublai Khan's court, part of his bureaucracy for 17 years. He allegedly traveled around and observed the Mongols and the Chinese, goes back to Europe, gets arrested for something, and is thrown in prison, and while in prison starts writing his memoirs, or all these things that he did when he was in China. And so people started to become much more aware of China based on Marco Polo's work, and we're really quite impressed by the things that he described. The reason why historians aren't really sure whether Marco Polo actually went to China or not is because some of the information that he provides is factual, but some of it is really kind of fantastical and doesn't seem to be right at all. And so, when we've worked with the documents-based questions of the past, we know that we look at history from documentary evidence, from things that people wrote about at some period of time. And so, once again, we're just not really sure whether his story is true or not. But it certainly does put, whether it's true or not, it certainly does put China in the minds of European people, and then also spread sort of the fame or the infamy of the Mongols as well. Well, the Mongol Empire in China starts to fall after the Chinese had been ruled for about 100 years with that Yuan dynasty. The Chinese aristocrats, the land-holding class of people in China, were tired of savage, uncivilized Mongol people, not letting them have any stake in power, kind of humiliating them. Like I've mentioned before, Chinese people usually view the outsiders as barbarians, and Chinese themselves are as the most advanced people. Also, the Black Death spreading throughout all of the Khanates hurts Mongols' ability to rule. A lot of people are dying. There's a lot of economic problems, and those in China start to think, well, this Yuan dynasty has lost the mandate of heaven. So what happens is those scholar officials, those who are helping the Mongols rule China, these are the actual Chinese ones and not the foreigners and the Mongols who came in. There's a lot of these scholar officials still throughout the empire. They rebelled against later Mongol rulers and were able to overthrow them. And then a new Chinese dynasty, a new family takes over in 1368. It's called the Ming dynasty. In other places, the other Khanates, the Il Khanate and the Khanate of the Golden Horde and so on, I think really they continue to exist for a bit longer than China, but eventually they too will collapse. And they collapse because those different kinds of people, whether they be Persians or Russians and so on, are also tired of Mongol rule, and also really don't, and also, like I said, the Mongols kind of get soft and aren't able to keep power from slipping from their hands. They're no longer quite as savage and tough as they once were. Well, that's it for the lecture today. I hope you got some things down on your EQs, and then go ahead and do the U6P2 lecture check, lecture quiz. Thanks so much and have a great day.